Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life, Law, Bin. Now, this is the big achievement now, the big drum roll. Now, we spoke about the fact that you will be a future pupil barrister. Now, what is key, because I know that this wouldn't have been your first time applying. So can you describe the strategy that you implemented this year when you applied for pupillage?
Okay, so I did a lot of things this year that I didn't do before. So first of all, I planned everything much earlier because I was finally not underestimating the process. I started planning in about October. I sourced mentors to help me through the process. And I started planning my applications around then. And then around, I think November, is it November when the questions are released? I started writing my answers for the questions in November. And what I wanted to do, because I was doing my master's, I was also still waiting for my bar course results around that time, and doing charities, doing so many different things. And around that time, I also needed to ensure that I wasn't gonna burn out and I wasn't overworking myself. So I chose one application that I thought was going to be my most difficult application to complete, or more so the one that I would have needed to impress the most on. And I used that as my starter application. And from there, I built all of my other applications based on that one. So the why do you think you'd make a good barrister? Why do you want to be a barrister? Any other information, all these different things. Those were largely the same in my applications. And then from there, we got that community that started, I think, around late November, early December. We started the international student group. It was just called Support Group for International Students at the time. And I sent out messages asking anyone if they wanted to join, and we did. We got that community started, and we also were able to source barristers. Nadia and I, and also some other students, reached out to barristers who might have been interested in coming to speak to us, who had also been international students, whether they be EU people from the EU, people from Australia, anyone. We got them, and we tried to speak to them and have them come on and speak to us about the visa process, because that was the thing that we were most confused about, was the visa process and whether chambers cared about us not being British. And they were able to quell a lot of our fears at that time. So for me, I think that that community was great in terms of planning my strategy, in terms of, do I want to highlight my international experience a lot? Do I want to just write an application like if I'm anyone else? What do I want to do? It really helps with planning that out. And also that community, that student group, was essential in understanding the different chambers and their personalities. I'm saying personalities because different sets have different values, and I know a lot of barristers say, well, it's a big set, so we don't have any shared values, we're all self-employed. But you can tell some sets have very, very strong ethos, and they put that forward, and other sets don't have a strong ethos. And from there, you can even get a lot from that set if they're not putting forward their ethos really strongly. And why this was important was that, for example, if I was applying to London, I have never studied in central London. I don't know anything about the chambers in London, but Nadia knows everything about London because that's where she's lived for the past 4 years. So she can tell me stuff about these chambers. She can tell me which chambers personality fits with mine and where she thinks I'm going to fit in. I can tell everyone else what I think about the Midlands and how I think they should approach their applications and all of that stuff. So it was just essential to have that community in order to plan and to know what we should have been saying. And I'm saying we because I feel like when three of us got pupillage, because we ended up getting pupillage, it felt like we all did, you know. So another thing that we did was that we had workshops in the group on Saturdays to critique each other's applications when they were finally done. So we did our applications, we had workshops to critique each other's applications. And, you know, this person would say, well, you know, I think that sounds really Caribbean. That doesn't sound British. So change the sentence structure because you know, international students have a different way of speaking. So it's not going to come off the same way that you think it's going to come off to a British person. So change that around. And that's something that I wouldn't see because I'm just looking at my own application. But Nadia is going to see something differently because she lived in different countries and you know, you're going to see something differently because you also lived up north and all this stuff, you know. And for interviews, when I got to the interview stage, I did loads of mock interviews with my mentors. I did interviews with people who were just randomly offering on Twitter. The Inner Temples BAME Society did one. And also just my friends, like we just had so many interviews for each other, and it was really good. It was good practice speaking to other people and trying to be very clinical in my speech and to think like a barrister. And what I found was that for some interviews, I did mock interviews with my friends right before I did the actual interview. So like with Nadia's harsh. She scares you before you actually have to go to the interview. So nothing that comes up in the interview is going to phase you because you've just, you know, you lived through a Nadia interview, and it was good practice. And for interviews, I know this is like a lot of information overload, but there's so much that I did this year that was just completely different from last year. For interviews, speaking to people who did them previously was really important as well. And from there, you also found out what a set wanted in interviews. You found out whether a set was more academic leaning in their first round, if they wanted more personality in the first round, if they wanted short and crisp answers, or if they were allowing you to have some leeway. So for me with Ropewalk, I did a lot of research before my interview, a lot of research. And I found that there were two pretty intense advocacy exercises at both of the interviews. So I figured from there that if there's going to be an intense advocacy exercise, then that is my opportunity to show my academics and to show my intellectual ability and my advocacy skills. And then whatever questions they ask me after that, they will most likely be looking for personality and whether or not you would fit into the set. So I was able to use that information as a strategy and just really, really focus on my research in my interviews for the advocacy exercise, you know, that portion of the interview. And then from there, just allow myself to be myself and to show my personality and not be constrained by any preconceived notions that I might have about the pupillage process or even about them. And it paid off. So yeah.
It definitely did pay off. Now, leading up to the pupillage application, what kinds of things did you do to enhance it? Because I think that's the question for students who have a summer before them, before the next cycle of pupillage applications opens.
Right. So do everything. Do every single thing that you see. If you're at BPP, do street law, do what else do they have? Do lease, do all of these different things. I'm not sure what U law does, but do everything. If you see a volunteer opportunity coming around, do it. If you see an internship coming around, do it. I would be lying if I didn't say that I didn't have a couple of internships under my belt. I do. And a lot of this was just planning because I knew that I had to be the best. And one thing that I noticed in my last application round was that I was underestimating everyone who was going up against me. Everybody, even though I was at the top of my game, I didn't realize that everyone else who is an aspiring barrister is brilliant. They're exceptional. Everyone is exceptional, and everyone is at the top of their respective games. So you need to make sure that even though you think you have the best CV out there, you are doing more. So internships, do it. Mini pupillages, apply for them. Mock moot court competitions, apply for those as well, do them. If you see any volunteer experience, pro bono experience is really important. And I think also, depending on the area of law that you're interested in, different opportunities are going to be more attractive to sets than there are to others. So if you're interested in public law and human rights and all that stuff, then doing a lot of pro bono work around the human rights sphere is going to be a lot more attractive than doing 500 mini pupillages. Actually, I think that's going to be attractive to anyone more than 500 mini pupillages. If you're going for a commercial set, then having a paralegaling job in a commercial firm is going to be very attractive as well. If you're going for PI and ClinNeg, then having that paralegaling job is also going to be really attractive to them. And also having a job where you show that you can work well with other people, because you're going to be working with real people who are going through real things. So showing that you can handle that is going to be important. So even if your job isn't legal, having a job that allows you to interact with a bunch of people is very, very important. And the same thing, that advice also goes for family law and crime.
Brilliant advice. And do you have any tips really for approaching the written stage of the application?
So my tips for approaching the written stage is to, first of all, to ensure that you are dotting your I's, crossing your T's. Make sure that your application is spotless. It is flawless. There was a point where on my hardest application, I had 4 or 5 people reviewing it. So after one person reviewed it, another person reviewed it, and it wasn't really for to tell me to, oh, I don't like this answer. It was to check for grammar mistakes, to check for punctuation errors. I have been in too many pupillage events where the barrister who is in charge of the pupillage process says, we throw out applications as soon as we see a comma missing. As soon as we see a typo, it's in the garbage. So that was never going to be me. It was not going to happen. Not this year. I was not letting it happen. That is, you work too hard on an application to have it thrown away because you missed a full stop. Excuse me? No, not today. So I think that's one of my main tips. My second tip is to try to get advice from somebody who's been through it and who was very successful in application rounds. So in the international student group, we have this girl who is just brilliant. Like got, I think this year got like 12 first rounds, like something, like mad like that. And last year got like 8 first rounds. So we knew, okay, well, give us tips. How would you answer this question? How would you structure this question? How did you do it? And then from there, you can either say, well, I'm not going to do it that way, or okay, that's a good idea. I didn't listen to her for any of my applications really, but I do think that maybe if I did, I would have gotten more first rounds. So definitely listen to advice. Don't be me. And also, I want to say to be yourself, but also be cognizant of the fact that barristers are reading hundreds of applications and they want you to get straight to the point. No pros at the beginning. In any application, for example, in the why do you want to be a barrister? I want to be a barrister for 3 reasons. Firstly, blah, blah, blah. Secondly, blah, blah, blah. Thirdly, blah, blah, blah. When you see questions like that, I feel like we could have a whole thing on how to answer certain types of questions. So I don't think we have the time to go into how to answer that, but if you want to know, you can message me. But yeah, very clinical and have a set structure for every single question.
I definitely think when pupillage cycle reopens, I can have maybe a series or mini series on pupillage workshops, breaking it down. How do we approach certain questions and stuff? That will definitely be beneficial to many viewers because we all know the anxiety and the anxiety really reaches that an ultimate high when pupillage cycles open. Yeah, and we do know that the interview process is just as taxing or even more taxing or scary really than the written. So can you describe the interview process beginning with how you prepared for it and then concluding with the nature of the questions and how you dealt with it?
Okay, so that's going to depend on the set because every single set that I was interviewed at had a different process. So which one would you prefer me?
Well, you can just generalize for us. And when I say generalize, you can say, well, you can expect this kind of interview style. So some people do a debate, others might find an advocacy exercise more pertinent. So you can just let the viewers know what to expect. Like there's a whole range that can be thrown at you really during the interview. So you can just let them know.
Okay, so um, I'll hmm, I'll go based on practice areas. So I did interviews at 2 very high, very top human rights and public law sets. I did an interview at 2 PI sets and also 1 common law set that did several different areas. So for public law and human rights, I found that the interview process was there are very many hot topic questions. So like what's going on right now, Brexit, the Criminal Conduct Act, the police bill, all these different things. Those were questions that people would ask. And if there is an advocacy exercise, it's going to be a case that they give you to analyze. And from then you have to answer a couple of questions. And that case usually always comes first. And then from there is a hot topic question or 2, and then an ethical question, and then just a question about yourself. So that's usually the structure. And for common law sets that I've applied to, I have had for first round just a lot of different questions, very short answers that they're looking for, very random questions like describe the color white without saying white, something like that. and just questions about you, and what they're looking for is advocacy and all of that stuff. And for other common law sets, I've had more difficult advocacy exercises. But I find with common law sets, they really want the more personal type of answers, and they ask those type of typical questions like, oh, well, why do you want to be a barrister? Why do you want to come here? And all of that stuff. The commercial pupillage that I applied for, that was, because I did apply for a commercial pupillage, that was similar to the common law set, but I think that was because it was a very big set that did different pupillages. So it was just a general pupillage interview. And for PI, I found that for Ropewalk, there was as I stated before, there was a very, very intense advocacy bit where they sent a brief about 10 minutes before the interview, and I had 10 minutes to research this, like, bundles of pages in this brief, and research, compile answers to maybe a dozen or so answers or whatever, a dozen or so questions, and then from there answer the questions perfectly when I was asked. And after that, it was questions about, oh, well, why do you want to come to the UK? You're leaving your island paradise to come to the cold and the rain and all of that stuff. Why are you doing that? Why do you want to come to this area of the country? So that's a question that you're definitely going to get if you're outside of London. Why do you want to come to our area of the UK, and all that stuff? So that is really how I anticipate any interview is going to go, and it really depends on the practice area. But my advice on how to prepare for them: do your research, make sure that you understand what kind of questions they're likely to ask you, and that you prepare for them really well. Make sure that you're keeping abreast with hot topics and current events in the United Kingdom, and ensure that you are answering questions in a very structured way. That even with interview answers, it's still meant to be, I want to come to the UK for 3 reasons. Firstly, the UK has interesting law. Secondly, I like the UK bar and how fast-paced it is. And thirdly, I actually like the rain and I hate how hot Barbados is. And that's the answer. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, this is a bit long-winded because I'm just trying to fit so much information into one answer, and not trying to go on too long because I'm
No,
cognizant of
no,
time.
no. The beauty of YouTube is that people can pause and go back. People still go and watch videos that were published months ago. So don't worry about it. People will pause, take notes, and then resume. So, but thank you very much for coming and sharing with us today, Mequissa. It's always a pleasure. There's always great content on the channel, and you're always quite a good guest to interview. I love all my guests, but I do have a special place. I have many special places, but I do have a special place for you um, on my channel and in my heart. And I hope everyone else, yeah, thank you, Makisa. I hope everyone else enjoyed it, because this was some real talk on visas and coming over to the UK, and real talk on going for pupillage. So thanks.
It always is.
Yeah, always. Thanks a lot, Makisa.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, and I'm sure we'll see you again sometime soon.
I hope so.